It was the middle of the night when opened her eyes under the dim light when tried to figure out where she was. Her body was aching badly. She wanted to cry out in pain and she soon realized she was in Daegu, in Taehyung's home. She was about to stop moving randomly as soon as she figured out that the lights were on at the study table. Do you want something? Hungry? Tay's deep voice made her frozen at her spot. She tried to pretend asleep, but she could sense his deep gaze fixed on her. She gradually opened her eyes. Water? Obviously, they had already put a filled water bottle on the nightstand. He sat on her headside and took the water bottle to uncap. He carefully made her to be seated on the bed. He could feel her body temperature. He was about to ask her whether she was having a headache or something like that when her tummy growled. When closed her eyes in embarrassment and slided into the blanket and covered her head to hide from them. We are in home when there's nothing to be embarrassed if you are hungry or having a fever or a strong headache. They uncovered her head and started checking the temperature of her forehead with his palm. Your mom must be sleeping. You're tired too. I know cooking, but I don't know where the things are. What if I turn your kitchen into a mess? One finally opened her eyes and looked at him. Mom is still working in her room. I guess she won't refuse some delicious supper. Tell me what you want to eat. They assured her with a bright smile. Get up and let's check what's in the fridge. One knew they was not going to let her sleep without having food, and the worst part was she knew he didn't know how to cook. Wan sat on the bed and tried to think what she gonna cook. Yeah, she could sense a strong headache, and soon she realized her whole body was aching. Her eyes tried to scan the whole room to find her bag. She knew she could hardly make it to the kitchen. She was not in the condition to even stand properly on the floor, and she felt a grip on her waist. It was there. She looked at him. Try to stand up. I'm holding you. Don't worry. With trembling steps, Van made it to the kitchen area. Let me microwave the foods we have ordered. They made her to be seated on the kitchen counter just beside the sink area and handed her his phone. Dial mom's number. Is she in her office at this hour? Van hesitated a little to touch the screen as she didn't know the unlocking pattern of the phone. No, she is in her room. They managed to reply her while serving the food. Password? When uttered in a low tone. 1401. They told her their digits casually. When dialed as Taehyung told her to do, but the call was unanswered. Mom didn't receive the call. I guess she has fallen asleep. Okay. They hummed and took the plate he had arranged for his mom. Wait for me. He uttered and walked towards Mrs. Kim's room, and after a few minutes, he walked out of her room. That's it. He placed Van's plate in front of her before turning on the sink tap to wash their hands. It's okay, I can do it myself. Van flinched as the cold tap water came in contact with his skin, but they was completely unbothered with his actions. Did you take any medicine today at morning? Aspirin. Van almost whispered the word. Oma didn't come? She's a little angry. They looked at her while giving her the pair of chopsticks. Because of me? Van stammered. No, I'm the reason. They paused for a moment. Eat, Van. Confused Van looked at Dev while eating her portion of food. Thousands of insecurities were revolving around her mind. What if? Her face turned pale as She remembered Mrs. Kim was in Min's place in the evening. What if she knows I'm daughter of a helping hand lady of the Min's? What if she knows I signed the... Mom knows Mr. Lee and she is aware of your step relationship with him. They stopped eating and looked at her. Mom is proud of you because of your journey, and she is angry because I couldn't take care of the diamond. One almost choked emotionally. She looked at them with trembling eyes. Why I am feeling, though I'm all dressed. You have the entire life to feel yourself like that in front of me, but for now, eat up your food. Mom will be angrier if you don't eat sufficient food. They looked at her bowl and concentrated on eating. How are you feeling, Van? Mrs. Kim entered into the dining area with an empty bowl. After putting that into the sink, she carefully placed her palm on her bare neckline and forehead to check the temperature roughly. Don't take medicine randomly. You know what's best for you. Don't take the shortcut, cutie. Van was confused. Her gaze swinged between the Lady Kim and Taehyung. You argued? No, she scolded me. They pouted. Van looked at the mother-son duo. I think I should go to bed. Van stopped. Mrs. Kim told her to stop in a stern tone. Son, take her to the room. They silently nodded before getting up from his seat. Obviously, one couldn't deny how she was craving for his warmth, but in front of her mother-in-law, she felt a little uneasy as she saw Tay coming towards her. It's okay, I can go myself. You want me to be scolded again? They whispered into her ears before grabbing her waist and taking her into his arms and carried her in bridal style. They made her seated on the bed. He was about to break the embrace when one stopped him. You did this because you didn't want to be scolded. No, they tightened the hug. I used it as an excuse. I just wanted an excuse to hug my wife, who was craving for me, but I know she won't admit. Van looked at him and lowered her eyes. Van, can I request you something? They stretched his arm to grab his bag to take the stethoscope out. I actually need you. I want to assist me. Please? Van looked at him. I'm okay, it's just fatigue. Aspirin works like magic. I didn't know aspirin got magical power. They put on the earpiece of the stethoscope and placed the diaphragm on her chest. Usually, it was a very common device for one, but this time it wasn't. She was at the patient's end. Her husband was at the doctor's end. One tried her best to breathe normally, but she was frozen at a spot. Her eyes were fixed on Tay. She wanted to be hugged by the person who was busy checking her breathing pattern. They took off the stethoscope and turned on the thermometer. Put it under your tongue. He pushed the tip of the thermometer towards the back of her mouth and then closed her lips around the electronic device. The few seconds until the thermometer beeped. They were quiet. They carefully took the thermometer and checked the display. How are you feeling, Van? I have aspirin in my backpack, please. Van almost cried in pain. They gave her the backpack and an azithromycin antibiotic along with a glass of warm water. Have this. Van took an aspirin tablet and took the antibiotic they gave her. Tried to gulp down the two tablets in one go, but she couldn't. Quickly, she took another sip of water and successfully gulped down the tablet in the second attempt. Her mouth was filled with the bitterness of the tablet. They tried his best to control his laugh, but looking at her face, his power of endurance gave up and he burst into laughter. Yeah, this version of wine was quite new to him. She was cute. She was looking adorable when she made face sensing the bitter taste. She drank almost the whole bottle of water in one go. Of course, one's eyes were fixed on the laughing body. She cursed and slid into the blanket. They knew nobody would like to be the topic of laughter, especially a woman, and one was none other than his wife. He knew it was his duty to comfort her. Are you okay? He snuggled into the blanket and wrapped his arms round her waist. He carefully made her to be seated on the bed. Have this. He offered her candy. How many of these do you have? When asked before tasting the candy. You want more? They managed to ask while his hands were busy to arrange the things that were lying on the bed. And finally, he snuggled under the blanket. He stretched his arms to reach one and carefully wrapped his torso with her arms. You told me that you would spoon me every single night. No. Taehyung wasn't forcing her to spoon him, but both of them were tired. Obviously, they just wanted to wait for Wen to fall asleep and he would eventually embrace her. But he didn't want to speak his plans in words. Wen, close your eyes. They turned around and take her into his embrace. How are you feeling now? Obviously, Wen was moved with his sudden action, hurting like hell but better. She whispered. One could feel these slender fingers caressing her hairs. Wen smiled and closed her eyes.